Hey, what's going on? My name is Rob Payon, and welcome to the Proof of Talent show, where we talk about everything related to the career journeys within the blockchain, cryptocurrency, and Web3 space. Today, we have a really good interview. It is with Afolabi from Cross River Bank. Now, you may not have heard of Cross River before. You've probably actually used their services, but this interview, in my opinion, is great because it really dives into some of the challenges associated with finding roles within the cryptocurrency industry and how hard that can be for many people. So I think if you are somebody who is seeking your first opportunity within the crypto space right now and coming up against some challenges is taking longer than you maybe hoped, it's a little bit harder than you hoped, I think this interview is really going to resonate with you. Afo also has a really interesting and varied background and quite an impressive background. So without further ado, let's hop into the interview. Afolabi, thanks so much for taking the time to join the Proof of Talent podcast. Really appreciate it. And one of the first questions that I want to hop into, you have a really varied and interesting background prior to working in the blockchain, cryptocurrency space, fintech space, whatever you want to call it. What were you doing professionally before you got involved in the crypto space?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Great to be here. So for me, I've had about approaching 15 years of experience, mostly around strategy and operations. But honestly, it's been a range of industries. So I studied chemical engineering. My first job was designing oil refineries down in Texas. And then I moved into becoming an oil analyst. Then I became a consultant. And most recently, before switching over to crypto, I worked at a bank in payments. So I've done a couple different industries. So we're just pursuing my interest, really.
How did you go from oil to to consulting to a bank? What was kind of the impetus for the interest transition
Yeah,
there?
I think for me, one of the things, ever since I was a young kid growing up in Nigeria, I wanted to work on problems that were big. I'm going to solve problems. And so for me, as a kid, I had memories of waiting with my grandma or my parents in line for hours to buy gas. And so that was a problem I saw up front. And that's part of the reason why I went into oil and gas. So like I wanted to go build refineries and solve that problem that I saw firsthand growing up. And then after coming to the States and learning, okay, oil isn't just helping people have power, but there are also some challenges with the environment. Um, and then I also saw the industry wasn't necessarily booming. I felt, okay, doesn't that make sense for me to be in a fast growing space? And so consulting was great because I got to develop this like business skill set without going to business school. And that helped me transition into a new industry.
And when you went from, so it looks like, just pulling off your LinkedIn, you were at McKinsey and then you ended up going into
Yeah.
banking. Were you working with like banking
No,
clients at McKinsey and that struck an interest or?
well, no, no, I didn't. I worked initially, my first year at McKinsey was focused mostly on oil and gas and chemicals. Then, after I got the consulting toolkit down, I started serving companies across different industries. I really didn't touch financial services. But again, based on my own life experience, I thought payments to me felt like pipelines in a strange way, right? In oil pipelines, you're moving oil from point A to point B, and someone charges a tariff. And one thing I noticed back, this is like 5 years ago, but the richest people in Texas, many of them actually owned oil pipelines. And then I took a step back and I thought, okay, actually, payments are like oil pipelines for the economy. And if you can just charge a little bit of money over time, the economy continues to grow, you could do really well by, essentially charging a tariff on the economy. So that was like the analogy I used to kind of break into the payment space. And then when I got into payments, I realized, there are actually some big inefficiencies, some things haven't changed in decades, and there might be better technologies to get this thing done.
One of the things that I think as somebody who works with a lot of different hiring managers, I feel like I hear both in crypto and outside that there's always seems to be a preference or an interest in people working within the consulting space or interest in hiring people that have that background, at the kind of the McKinseys of the world. Like what type of qualifications or What type of skill set did you learn within a role like that you feel like is applicable to kind of future roles, if anything?
Yeah, sure. I think there's several things that I found really helpful. One of the first things is really problem solving and structured problem solving. There's this joke about consultants that whenever like they're going to Starbucks, you can hear consultants in the place because they're speaking in very structured way. So a regular person goes to the barista, is like, yo, I would like to buy, I'm thinking I want to buy a bagel, and then I'm gonna get a coffee. I'm gonna get a caramel macchiato. The consultant goes there and is like, hey, hi barista. I'd like to get two things. The first thing is going to be a bagel. The second thing is going to be a caramel macchiato grande, soy milk. Thank you very much. And I think the structured communication is part of the structured problem solving. And that is the key in any industry when you're engaging with executives, when you be able to be clear on problem solving. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is you build. I worked on 18 projects across different industries in 3 years. And so you quickly build like a mental models of here's how you can quickly solve a problem. And you know how to quickly zero in because maybe you have seen some past experience. You know how to move quickly to actually, get there. So that's the second thing I would say. The third thing I would say is actually confidence. Um, if you think you can do it, you can do it. And the same is true the opposite way. So I think with consulting, I've been thrown in some really interesting, really intense, situations, and I survived. And so I was like, yeah, bring it. I can make it work.
When you moved from consulting to banking, what was that experience like for you kind of in that transition in
It
general?
was interesting because the team I joined was meant to be like a SEAL Team 6. So we're all former consultants and we're brought in to like bring new
People
ideas.
love hiring consultants.
They do, but bring in new ideas, move very quickly, increase efficiency, and also like build out this really, really cool payments business. So it was really exciting to work with people with similar backgrounds and an appreciation of the consulting toolkit. And then obviously at the same time, we quickly learned that the pace of work is different. So consultants are very expensive. Some of my projects were like 3 weeks long. And so from beginning to end, you have to get back to the leadership of the company with your solution. And then with McKinsey, what that often meant is you have to be done in 2 weeks because that last week is used for like, you want to get the other people on board, double checking everything. So you have to learn to move very quickly, sometimes work very long hours, smart, but a lot. And then in banking, it's not quite the same intensity. And so you have to learn how to work with people who have different incentives or just different way of working with people to get what you want to get done. Because in consulting, like I can say, hey, this is from the CEO. I need this date. I need this right now. And people tend to move. And then in banking, I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily have that same mandate. I have to build relationships. I have to take a different approach to getting what I need to get.
So you worked in banking prior to working in the crypto
Yeah.
space. With that said, what did you notice that was there anything in particular within the banking or the crypto or excuse me the banking space that you noticed like, hey, this might need improvements upon and kind of looking at the crypto space that might actually deliver that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was really payments, right? And that's the space I was seeing. And for me, I would see some of these stories of people who were trying to move money internationally. There's this lady I recall who would send like two wires, international wires, every month. And where I worked, that was $45 for each wire. So she's spending $90 per month on just moving money. That's number one, it's expensive. Number two, she had to actually call each time she wanted to initiate an international wire. That's high friction, right? And the third thing is like it takes time. So you can only do this during business hours. And then it takes maybe 2 days, 3 days. If you're sending money to some parts of Africa, it might take a week or more for it to arrive. So it's slow. And for me, when I started seeing opportunities where blockchain enabled solutions, whether it's stable coins, Lightning Network, could actually lead to better solutions, payments that are objectively cheaper, faster, lower friction, to me was a no-brainer. I was like, this is better technology, and consumers would be better off. I'm better off. So this is going to win over time. No question.
Was there a, was there a point in time when you were working in banking where you're like, hey, this crypto thing might be something that I want to do for a living? Was there a point in time where you started thinking that? And then if that actually occurred, how did you go about trying to make that
I
happen?
did. So it was during I started I first heard about crypto like 2015, and I was like, yo, this sounds like a scam. People are mining, you're printing money, no thanks. And then I actually had a personal experience trying to move money back to Nigeria, trying to donate to a nonprofit, and it was really difficult. And so some friends and I bought some Bitcoin, and then we actually sent it, and it got there instantly. I was like, wow, like this really works. And so I started talking about it on my team, like, guys, what do you think about this technology? Um, and the cool thing is people were receptive, but at the same time they were like, it sounds like a scam. Like, I don't understand this thing. So I was able to work with some people. I found some other people who were similar minded. Like, it's a huge community of people, you'd be surprised, who are, degens who have made, I mean, I have many stories of that actually be really surprising. But then I try to push some things internally, but frankly, it wasn't really being prioritized at that point in time. And I wanted to focus on what I felt was the future of technology. Why would I spend time learning the old stuff that's going to get replaced? Does it not make sense for me to like invest my time in mastering the new stuff? So that's for me was like, I need to move.
Got it. When you kind of figured out, all right, like now's the time to move, you obviously have an impressive background, like I said, varied background, engineering, consulting, banking. How did you try to go about finding a role in the crypto space? What were kind of those steps for you as an individual?
Yeah, it was actually a long process. I mean, the first of all, I was still trying to learn about the space before I decided to make the transition. So I actually ended up taking a Pumps crypto course. So that was early, I think that was last year. And it was great because for me, I feel like the learning you can find for free on YouTube and Twitter, but the community was actually really important to me. So I made friends, met them at Bitcoin Miami, and just stayed in touch with people. Then when I decided, okay, this was months later, I said, okay, I actually want to pivot into crypto full time. I sat down, I thought to myself, I'm going to have a problem here. Well, initially I applied for jobs and I got zero responses, and I realized I'm going to have a problem. And I realized a couple of things. First of all, my resume didn't really make sense to people, right? Like you say you did engineering, then you're working at a bank and the refineries, and now crypto. Like, what are you doing? So I think just learning to tell my story was really important. First of all, like look into myself. What are my key strengths? What can I bring to the table? That was the first thing. And part of that was actually figuring out what kinds of roles could I be competitive for. So I looked at a whole bunch of things. Like I said, strategy, there are very few strategy roles. Um, then I said product, I said partner, I did all sorts of things. And I felt
Yep.
the place I had the strongest traction was around business operations, which is kind of like consulting a little bit. So that was the second thing I did, just got clarity on the kind of roles. The third thing I did was then I developed like a list. I have an Excel model of like, these are my top 10 like crypto companies I like. Then here are my next 10. And then these are the other 10 who I've heard something about them. I want to dig in. And I basically had like, those are the three categories. After that, I started like saying, who do I know at these companies? And I realized I didn't know many people. So I started trying to find people who were in roles that could hire me. So I'll look for like VPs of Biz Ops or VP of, whatever. Um, And I started hitting people up on LinkedIn, and it was rough. I honestly thought it would take me like, 2 months to break in. For me, my journey was much longer than that. But I would just email people like every day. I'd try and send 2, 3 emails, random cold emails. And the response rate was pretty bad. Like it would be some one week we got 0 responses. And that was rough. I was like, what am I doing? And then some other weeks I get like maybe 5%, 10% response. The best is like 15% response rate. So I did that for a while. Um, and that's how I started getting interviews, was finding people and just like engaging with you. Can I have 15 minutes of your time? And that's where I started getting offers to start rolling in. Yeah.
I think it's a great story too, because a lot of people, especially in non-technical roles, I think the path for some people, the path for non-technical positions is not as clear or straightforward as it is in or as it is outside of the crypto industry. A lot. It's interesting because I think so many industries out there that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is, the career path and the interview
Yeah.
process and all that type of stuff is very cut and dry and straightforward. And if you have this background, you're a good fit for this position. And it's not so much that within the blockchain space right now. And even to hear somebody like yourself, who, again, you have a really polished, impressive background, having to kind of hustle that hard to get an entry into the space. I would hope that if somebody's listening right now and you're having a tough time finding that non-technical opportunity, you kind of just have to stick with it, because it isn't always the most straightforward or easy thing. It takes a little bit of extra time and effort. And somebody like yourself, who rather than just applying to positions and kind of hoping, you took that extra step of networking and reaching out to people and trying to build those connections. And that was ultimately one of the things that helped you to land the role in the space.
Absolutely. I think that was really important because for me, I just felt like, yes, I mean, applying for jobs online is a nice thing, but I felt like I would have a much better chance if I could actually just speak to someone. Whether or not you had a role
Mm.
available, let's just talk. And, people on Twitter, I've been so impressed. Like, I hit up people who are pretty high up, like COOs of exchanges, executive vice president of large crypto companies, and some of them responded and they were like, "Can you talk today, tomorrow?" And I'll just really till this day, like people hit me up. I do try and make time, trying to pay it forward because I've benefited so much from other people being so generous with their time. And yeah, I think it's really comes down to like how bad do you want it? If you want it, you'll continue pounding
Yep.
the pavement and sending those emails. It's not fun, but you know, get it done.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think a couple points too that are good about that is, number one, I do think the accessibility within the space of, like you said, these top leaders at very large companies that are multi-billion dollar companies in this space, that you can still kind of make your way and have those conversations with them via DM on Twitter or somewhere, on whatever it might be. If you write them kind of genuine messaging, it is very difficult to do that in a
Yeah.
traditional industry. You are likely not going to reach a C-level executive from Goldman or from JP Morgan on Twitter
Nah.
DM. You have a decent chance of doing that in the crypto space if you are sending them like a real polished, genuine message. So I think that's one. Another thing that you said that was kind of going back to the earlier story that was funny that I just thought of was, I've had it happen. It doesn't happen very often. I think there was one other person that sent me a list of maybe 30 companies that they liked, that was kind of color coded in terms of interest. They were also a former consultant. So that just kind of cracked me up a little bit. So after a bit of time hustling to get those interviews, compiling companies that you thought would be a good fit, reaching directly to people you thought might actually be the individuals that would end up hiring you, you ended up working full time in the space. What are you currently doing right now within the crypto world?
Yeah, so I joined Cross River, and my role is Director of Crypto Business Operations. And business operations is one of those terms which like means different things at different places. And that to me is actually kind of exciting because what it meant was that I would get to have different experiences within a lot of exposure within the space. So for me specifically, um, business operation, biz ops has meant everything from preparing materials to try and get like regulatory approvals to helping build out our OKRs, structure for managing the entire team, for to doing things with like managing our vendor selection and onboarding process, helping lead finance for crypto. Um, there's also there's more. For me, I've really enjoyed that because again, I'm someone who is very curious, and it's been great just being able to have my tentacles in different areas and support the team in whatever is needed to get us over to the finish line.
So unless you're somebody who's, I would say, pretty deep in the maybe institutional or the business to business side of the crypto landscape, or
Hmm.
unless you really pay close attention to your banking statements when you withdraw from Coinbase or some other exchanges, you might not know what Cross River is. Would love to hear kind of what Cross River is and also how it is involved with crypto, because you guys do quite a bit outside of the crypto world as well, right?
Yes, yes, indeed. I mean, I'll back up. I discovered Cross River by an interview of the CEO had with some McKinsey senior partners. And I was just blown away by number one, the humility and authenticity of leadership. And number two was just this sense of wanting to include people and reach people who are underserved, as well as this appreciation for technology. Those three things really stuck out to me. And that's why I reached out to like the crypto team based off just seeing this random podcast interview. But Cross River, we have a banking license, but we see ourselves as a provider of financial or fintech infrastructure. So we serve businesses, primarily fintechs, across different areas. So we, on the basic side, we have bank accounts for them. But more interestingly, we do things like banking as a service, payments, and lending. I could give you some examples. So on the payment side, for example, we provide white label payment services to fintech. So someone like a Coinbase, every time you move your dollars onto the Coinbase platform within the US, you're actually using Cross River's capabilities. You just don't know it, right? Then on the lending side, during the pandemic, I had a bunch of friends buying Pelotons, and I'm sure some of them paid for them in installments, right? So some of those loans, we're actually backing them up, providing some of the loans for the installments. So those are some ways where you're probably using Cross-River's capabilities. You just don't know us because we are B2B. And so about a year ago, we said, doesn't it make sense for us to actually go beyond and just start building out crypto infrastructure that could support fintechs and even crypto companies, Web3 companies. And that's what my team is doing. So we're a small team, we move quickly, but we have the benefit of a banking license. We have the benefit of industry leading technology for payments, bank as a service, and so really we can leverage those capabilities to do some really interesting things in crypto. And that's why I'm really excited to be where I am right now.
Awesome. Now that you've been in the crypto space or been with Cross River for about a year, curious as to what's maybe surprised you about working in this arena versus banking or consulting previously.
Got it. So I think, well, first of all, you go out to dinner and you tell people, hey, I work in crypto, and you have like really different reactions. Some people are like, and some other people really tell you about their portfolio. Here's what I'm buying. And so that to me is interesting. But on a more serious note, I think one thing which it didn't surprise me as much, but one thing I do really appreciate a lot more is risk and compliance. I think having gone through the year we've gone through so far with Celsius and other things melting down, I think I just have a much greater appreciation for risk and compliance. Like, it's nice to move quickly, but you want to move quickly in the right way. And sometimes there's this tension of like moving quickly and doing it right. And I think you need both legs to stand. And so That's something which previously I would have said move quickly by any means necessary. And then now I'm like, no, let's do it in a thoughtful, measured, you know, safe and compliant way.
Yeah,
So
move
that's
fast and break things isn't as fun when there's $10 billion of AUM and customer funds and bankruptcy and all the crazy things that are happening now with Celsius, which
that's right.
isn't super fun for, I'm sure, any person that had a dollar deposited there.
No, no. Yeah, and I think you could even go to jail, right? Depending on your role. If something goes wrong, it's serious stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's honestly is would play towards Cross River because we are regulated. Our offerings could actually enable us. That's my hypothesis that we could. There might be a pivot to be players like us who can do things in a safe and compliant way. That's one thing that stood out and transitioned over time.
Awesome. Has anything in particular, as you think about your like evolution within the space now, has anything been very helpful to kind of advance your viewpoint or your capacity as a professional in terms of, was there anything that you were using to learn to get up to speed faster, or any type of kind of information education that you were consuming on a consistent basis?
Yeah, I would say there are really a couple buckets. So the first bucket is knowledge, and number two would then be writing, and then number three is relationships. So knowledge, it would be like podcasts, YouTube videos, Twitter, just reading, Discord, just reading. And then I started writing a little bit when I first started getting interested in crypto because for me, writing helps me clear my thinking. Writing forces me, if you can explain it to a 5-year-old, you really understand it. So that was helpful for me. And the third thing is relationships. Like it's nice to like DM people on Twitter, but like once you start forming real relationships with people, I think you can have really interesting conversations and you'll learn from your friends. And I think that's something I'm trying to really anchor on some more lately is, I mean, it's nice to go for all these conferences, but like if nothing, like you don't talk to people anymore, then it's kind of like a waste in my opinion. And so I'm trying to anchor more on like establishing and sustaining real relationships with other people in the space that could hopefully we can learn from each other. And so I'm part of a couple different like groups and informal and formal ones, but yeah.
Yeah, those are all really good points. I think that having that knowledge and trying to consistently expand on that is really helpful, and the educational portion of it. But like you said, the networking is really, really helpful and important in a variety of ways. Like whether or not you're working full time in the space professionally right now, or you're trying to get into the industry, going back to the point about like being able to reach executives and really kind of high level shiny people that you think you wouldn't be able to reach otherwise. I think also the ability to network with just there's a lot of genuine networking opportunities and people that are really excited and passionate about the space in areas I think not as much otherwise.
Yeah, and I think I try and use the word relationship building more because I want to be your friend like all seasons. It's not just about crypto stuff.
Yeah.
Like let's actually really connect, and we'll go grab brunch on Saturday morning and bring our wives or whatever, and we just connect and maybe go drag me out to the golf course and you laugh at me as I'm swinging. But but I think I think that's the piece where the industry is still relatively small right now, and so we can still meet people relatively quickly and get establish your reputation, and that will stand you well in the years to come.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, maybe when I say networking, that's a good thing for me to keep in mind in the future. Cause I think it sounds kind of stupid, but when I think of like networking, I'm just like thinking of kind of trying to make friends in the industry and people that share kind of similar thoughts with and that you like hanging out with and vibing with. And for me, that's half of conferences is like, I don't, at this point in time, I don't have any interest. It sounds bad, but most of the time, like if I go to a conference, I'm like, I don't really care about what these panels are saying. I just want to go and see my friends. And
Yeah,
because there's so many people in the crypto space that kind of live in all these different areas, I feel like conferences are just a great excuse for everybody to go to the same city and hang out and kind of party and
exactly.
do their own thing. And so thinking about things as relationship building versus like the networking for the sake of networking, where it's like, oh, I'm going to go and give you my business card and shake your hand and say hello. Like, definitely not as much that as just
Mm.
trying to find your friend group and people you enjoy hanging with in the space.
Yeah, spot on.
For somebody that is trying to get into the industry right now, we've covered it a little bit here or there, but what would be your advice to somebody who's trying to start a career in the crypto space right now?
Do it. So, but how to do it? I think the first step really starts from within. Like, why do you want it? If you have a strong why, that can help sustain you on the journey, because the journey might be quick or the journey might be like mine, longer than you expect. So you have a strong why. Why do you want this? Why is this important to you? That's the first thing. I think the second thing then becomes, what can you bring to the table? Like, what's your story? Why should anyone? What problem can you solve? End of the day, hiring managers want to know this person can solve this problem I have, and they have the capacity to do some more things in the future. So I think spending time getting really clear on that. Um, and then the third thing I would say is, talk to people. People have been super helpful in just like opening my eyes to things that I didn't know existed. Things sometimes you have a perception of your mind like, oh, I think sales is like this. And you talk to a couple salespeople and realize actually it's not what you thought it was. And maybe you have an interest. So I would just, explore. And I think the last thing is know what you will not settle for. When I was trying to break into industry, I got a lot of advice from a lot of different people. And some people told me, Afo, just take anything. And I was like, no, I'm not going to take just anything. Um, no, I want to go somewhere and anything won't just do. And for me, like, I wasn't, there were some opportunities which would have been like substantial pay cut, like 50%. For me, that wasn't something which I was open to doing at that point in time. And it can be difficult if you're like, that's the only option you have, and you have this passion. But if it's a non negotiable for you, then it's a non negotiable for you. You have to believe in an abundance of, of the universe and the world that you will eventually find that thing that's going to be set for you. So yeah, just pack your patience and keep your chin up and message me. I can give you a pep talk if you want one.
Yeah, it's really good advice, and it can be, again, going back to like the non-technical and versus technical, and I'm sure some engineers find it difficult as well, but it's certainly a much clearer and easier path for a traditional engineer to, or software engineer, somebody on the kind of more technical side, to find that opportunity versus like, even for myself, I've told this story a bunch, but like when I was getting into crypto, I was working as a software sales rep. I was an account executive at Oracle selling ERP accounting software. Like,
Hmm.
not a real clear transition into the crypto space. And what I used to do is when I had my YouTube channel, people would send me messages asking for interviews on the channel, and I would
Hmm.
look at the company and I would see if the company was interesting or legit, and if it was a place that I wanted to work for. And if it was, I would send them a message and I would say, hey, happy to have a chat. Also, I saw this opportunity on your careers page. Would love to chat with you about it. And
I love
that
it.
was essentially how I got into the crypto space.
I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was definitely for me. I mean, I feel like I was trying for months, and it
Hmm.
wasn't an easy thing. And like you said, it was just having conversations with people and trying to, even if I knew like maybe the opportunity wasn't perfect, I'll have the conversation and see where it might end up, and trying to be selective when it came down to things. So that was a for me
Yeah.
it was a not not an easy time in comparison to previously. I'm a software sales rep. I'm an account executive. I can apply for an account executive role.
Hmm.
Interview. It's easy. It's done.
Yeah. You touched on something which resonated with me. We call it proof of work, meaning like you had this YouTube channel on crypto already, right? So anyone who has like, whether it's a Substack, a newsletter, a YouTube video, a really active Twitter page, you have something you can point to and say, hey, I'm actually pretty serious about this. For me as a hiring manager, that gets me excited because like this person isn't necessarily like a fair weather person because crypto is hot right now. I'm trying to move in. That's not, I mean, we know those people too, but I get even more excited when there's a candidate who can show proof of work. Like they're really into this space and they're here for the long haul. That's really exciting to see.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's something that I definitely recommend all the time too. Is having that kind of tangible ability to on your resume or elsewhere show I am serious about this industry. I really do want to work here. I put in this time outside of my day job, outside of 9 to 5. I do this because I want to do this because I like this industry versus just saying, "Hey, I'm interested in crypto, and maybe I invested some money into it here or there."
Yeah.
We'll kick things off maybe with one last, or we'll end things, not kick things off. We'll end things with one last question. You had mentioned before that you're a hiring manager at Cross River, and I would be interested outside of proof of work. What else do you look at when you are interviewing somebody, when you're chatting with somebody? What else is kind of an appealing thing for you when you're trying to find people to join your team as a hiring manager?
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing first is, do they appear that they can do the job? And so we design our hiring process to try and actually test that out by using like a case and some of the questions we ask. That's just table stakes. The next thing I look at, and this is me personally, is I look at communication. Because I think, is this someone who I can put in front of like our C-suite? Is this someone who I could trust to go talk to some of our more important clients? Depending on the level, of course, but like I look at how they structure their communication. The next thing I would say is ambition. I love people who are ambitious, and that can come off like in the proof of work we just talked about. But people who like have just this raw drive for more, um, love to hire them. But I mean, even if they don't necessarily have the skill set per se, they can have 70%. That's good. Like that raw ambition will, that drive will take them and they'll outperform the person who has 100%. Those are the things that jump to my mind, is, yeah, like the last thing I would say that's super important is ownership. This is, a mindset of you're actually seeing yourself as an owner of the company. You're seeing yourself as being responsible for what's in your hand. So even if it's like a relatively simple task, like um, could you please, rank, get me all the list of all the digital assets, all the tokens. How do you do it? How, like the way you present the work and the way you do the work, it tells you about the sense of ownership. And people who display high sense of ownership, they tend to do really well. So I said a lot, but those are the things that came to my mind.
No, those are great, and I think always interesting to hear from different hiring managers and people that are involved in that process, like what they look for and how they think about things conceptually as well. So I think so many of the people that do listen are looking for an opportunity within the space or actively interviewing and those types of and going through those types of experiences now. So hearing from you on that is definitely really helpful. Really, this was an awesome conversation. I think your story, your background, and how you got into the space, for me it's great to hear. It's inspiring, and I think hopefully it will be inspiring for other people too, just to hear the level of depth. And it was a challenge for you, but it was something that you were able to accomplish, and you simply didn't give up with it, which I think some people do, and the people that don't get rewarded. And seems like you're in a really good spot right now, which is awesome, and excited about how hopefully your story will inspire some other people to continue on with their journey, finding that opportunity within the crypto space.
100%. And thanks for having me on board. I think it's really important to tell stories. I'm serious about people reaching out. I will respond to you. Might not be immediately, but I will respond if people do reach out because I do think it's important to share stories, encourage each other, exchange ideas. Who knows? You might be helping me in the future, right? Everything goes around in the world. So yeah.
Awesome. If somebody does want to reach out to you, what's the best place to do so?
The best places I would say would be LinkedIn or Twitter. My Twitter is Afo_Ogunnaike, I think. That's it. And then my
I'll throw
LinkedIn is my
links in the
name.
podcast bio for everybody out there. So if you wanna reach out, there'll be links there. But thank you so much for the time. It was really great to chat with you.
A pleasure. Have a good day.